Okay, so now let's do get. And for get, instead of showing a diagram, I'm just going to show the first line of the method. We're going to pass it an index, and then it's going to return the node at that index. So if you want to code this, go ahead and pause it here. Otherwise, we will get into the code. So for get, because we're going to use an index, I'm going to show the indexes with our linked list. I'm going to start with something that might seem obvious. In this situation, we can get something at the index of 0, 1, 2, or 3. But it is possible that someone could pass this method an index of -1. It could pass in an index of 4. So we have to test for this first to make sure that we have a valid index. So we're going to say if the index is less than 0 or the index is greater than or equal to the length, then we're going to return none, because obviously we can't get a node at any of those indexes. So we have to start with this. Now let's look at getting a valid index. We're going to have a variable called temp. We're going to have that point to the head. We'll do that like this, temp equals self.head. And I'm going to remove head and tail and just leave temp there. So whatever the index is, that's going to be the number of times we have to move temp over. So then we'll create a for loop that is going to run that number of times, and that will get us to the correct node. So we'll say for underscore in range index. So if it's an index of 2, the range is going to go from 0 to 2. And we'll talk about that underscore here in a second, in case you've never seen that. And then we'll say temp equals temp.next, and that will move temp along the linked list. Normally we have a variable in this spot. A lot of times we will call that I. But you're only supposed to put a variable there if it's going to be used inside of the for loop. For example, you could say print I. And that is using the I inside of the for loop. If you're not going to use the variable in the for loop, like this, we replace the I with an underscore. Okay, so now back to our for loop and moving that temp variable along. If this was a 2, we'd go 1, 2, and then temp would be pointing at the node that we want to return. And once we've done that, we can just say return temp. Now let's look at this code in with the rest of our code. Now this was all pretty straightforward here. The only real gotcha that you may not have thought about is this part here to test to see if the index is valid. All right, so we'll look at this code in a moment in VS Code. And when we do, we will create this linked list, 0 through 3. And in this situation, each value of a node is equal to the index of a node. So we're going to say get the node at the index of 2, and that should return the node with the value of 2. So let's flip over to VS Code. There is our get method there. And this is going to build our linked list with values 0 through 3. Then down here, we're going to get the node at the index of 2. And remember, that should be the one with the value of 2. So let's run this. And once again, you can see that it's just returned a node. So we'll come up here and add .value to make sure it's returning the correct node, and then we will run this again. And that returns the value of 2. All right, so I will remove the .value from our get method here. And it looks like we have a working method for get.